Chapter 21. Ling Tian appears. Wow, is Brother Yuan interested in the sword Tao too? Why don't you come back to the 7 Treasure Glazed Tile School with us? That way you can receive guidance from Grandpa Sword all the time. Before the sword Douluo could react, Ning Rongrong standing beside him spoke up excitedly, her beautiful eyes sparkling. Upon hearing this, the faces of Qian Renxue, Ning Fengjai and the sword Douluo all darkened. Rongrong, you must be joking. How could Xiao Yuan keep bothering senior sword Douluo? There's no need to go to the 7 Treasure Glazed Tile School, Qian Renxue said with a slightly stiff smile. She thought resentfully to herself, you brat, don't think I don't know what you're planning, don't even think about it. It's no trouble at all, Grandpa Sword would definitely be happy to do it, Ning Rongrong said, her large, beautiful eyes blinking as she stared at the sword Douluo. Am I right, Grandpa Sword? The sword Douluo really wanted to say no, but seeing his granddaughter like this, he nodded against his better judgment. Rongrong is right, cunning brat, all she knows is how to act cute, she's not even as cute as my Xiao Yuan. Qian Renxue gritted her teeth inwardly, her hand hidden beneath her robe clenching tightly. Ning Fengjai standing nearby couldn't take it anymore and scolded with a dark expression. Rongrong, stop fooling around. Ning Rongrong pouted, looking very unhappy. Just as she was about to talk back to her father, Ning Fengjai didn't give her the chance. He immediately looked at Qian Renxue and the sword Douluo and said, Your Highness, Uncle Jian, let us go and guide Xiao Yuan in the sword Tao now. After we finish speaking with Ling Tian, we must return to the sect immediately, there are urgent matters. Ning Fengjai spoke very quickly, fearing his daughter would interrupt if he went too slow. He looked down on Qin Yuan, a trash with only half a rank of innate spirit power, and couldn't give his daughter any chance to spend time with him. He didn't know how Rongrong could have taken a liking to that useless boy. Was it because he was good-looking? Ning Fengjai was full of helplessness and confusion. Qian Renxue, who was eager for Ning Fengjai to leave, and the sword Douluo, who didn't want to waste time guiding others, immediately nodded. Without giving Ning Rongrong any chance to interject, the 3 of them immediately headed toward Qin Yuan's residence. They left Ning Rongrong unable to catch up. No matter how angrily she shouted from behind, the 3, each with their own hidden motives, ignored her completely. On the way, for the sake of providing better guidance, the sword Douluo asked Qian Renxue, Your Highness the Crown Prince, how long has Qin Yuan been studying the sword Tao? Almost half a year, Qian Renxue answered immediately, knowing everything about her Xiao Yuan. The sword Douluo frowned slightly, feeling displeased. However, because the Crown Prince was present, he didn't show it, though he snorted coldly in his heart. He's only been studying the sword Tao for half a year, he probably hasn't even reached stage 1. To think that I, the great sword Douluo, have to guide him personally, any stage 4 or 5 swordsman in Heaven Dew City would be more than enough. Sigh, whatever. Since the Crown Prince asked, it's hard to refuse. I'll just give him some casual pointers this once and won't come back again. Having made up his mind, the sword Douluo's brow smoothed out. Just then Qian Renxue's voice reached his ears. Xiao Yuan reached stage 5 of the sword Tao 3 months ago. By now he must have entered stage 6. However, he has encountered a bottleneck and has been troubled for many days, which is why I've asked senior sword Douluo to guide him. As soon as these words were spoken, the sword Douluo and Ning Fengjai nearly slipped at the same time. They stumbled for a few steps before regaining their balance. Your Highness, what did you just say? Both of them turned to look at the bewildered Qian Renxue at the same time, their faces full of confusion as if asking, did I hear that right? Qian Renxue was stunned for a moment, then immediately realized why they reacted that way. After all, they hadn't seen her Xiao Yuan's heaven-defying comprehension yet, so such a reaction was normal. Thus she smiled and repeated herself, Xiao Yuan reached stage 5 of the sword Tao 3 months ago and must have entered stage 6 by now. I suspect he is currently trying to break through to stage 7 and has hit a bottleneck. That's why I'm bothering senior sword Douluo for some guidance. The sword Douluo and Ning Fengjai were both dazed for a moment, still unable to believe that such absurd words could come from the mouth of the Crown Prince. Ning Fengjai aside, the sword Douluo could be called the #1 person of the sword Tao in the Douluo Continent, a true genius of the sword. His understanding of the sword Tao had long since reached a transcendent level. But even he had spent a full 10 years to reach stage 6 of the sword Tao, let alone touching the realm of a sword Tao Grandmaster. And yet, the Crown Prince before them, the heir to the Heaven Dew Empire, was saying that a piece of trash with only half a rank of innate spirit power had touched the bottleneck of stage 7 after studying the sword Tao for less than half a year. How could he believe this? How could he dare to believe it? It was simply an utterly absurd, monumental joke. Glancing at Qian Renxue, the sword Douluo and Ning Fengjai opened their mouths as if to speak but hesitated, ultimately saying nothing as they continued toward Qin Yuan's residence. After all, Zhu Qinghe was the crown prince of the Heaven Dew Empire and its future emperor. They couldn't embarrass him. Arriving at Qin Yuan's residence, they found that he wasn't there. When they asked the 2 maids, Hong Yue and Bai Dai, they didn't know either, only that Qin Yuan seemed to have an extremely urgent matter and had left in a hurry. Having gone out of his way to lower himself and offer guidance to a sword Tao novice, only to have the person not be there and waste his trip. The sword Douluo was very displeased, his brow furrowed. Qian Renxue shook her head with a doting helplessness. He's really being naughty. I went to the trouble of getting the sword Douluo to guide him, yet he's running around everywhere. Oh well, at worst I'll pay a visit later, picking a time when Ning Rongrong isn't around, of course. She couldn't bring herself to blame her Xiao Yuan. Ah, brother Yuan isn't here. Ning Rongrong, who had run over panting, didn't see the Qin Yuan she had been longing for. Her pretty little face immediately fell, and the anticipation on her face instantly turned into deep disappointment. Qian Renxue glanced at the disappointed Ning Rongrong, the corners of her mouth curling up slightly, and Ning Fengzhai also breathed a sigh of relief. It was for the best that he wasn't there. Once they recruited Ling Tian, they would return to the sect immediately. He couldn't let Qin Yuan and Rongrong interact. How could his precious cabbage be uprooted by a useless pig with only half a rank of innate spirit power? Since Qin Yuan was absent, Qian Renxue, Ning Fengzhai, and the others turned to leave. Just as they reached the palace gate, a member of the 7 Treasure Glazed Tile School's Heavendu City branch ran over to report. Sect Master Ling Tian has appeared at the Tiandu Great Spirit Arena and is currently challenging a high-level spirit ancestor with a sword spirit. Both Qian Renxue and Ning Fengzhai's eyes narrowed, and they instinctively looked at each other with wariness. After a moment of hesitation, Ning Fengzhai smiled and said, "Your Highness, I shall take my leave first." "Please do, teacher," Qian Renxue responded with a smile of her own. Subsequently, Ning Fengzhai didn't even bother with the carriage and directly led the sword Douluo and Ning Rongrong, rushing toward the Tiandu Great Spirit Arena. Meanwhile, Qian Renxue also immediately returned to the Eastern Palace, ordering that no one disturb her. She locked herself in her study and followed a pre-prepared tunnel to a courtyard outside the Imperial Palace. Not long after Qian Renxue emerged, the porcupine-fish Douluo, who had been waiting there, appeared in a flash and immediately said, "Miss Ling Tian has appeared." "I know," Qian Renxue nodded seriously. She then told the porcupine-fish Douluo to wait while she entered a room. Chapter 22, Rejection. Inside the room, Qian Renxue shed her disguise as Zhu King and changed into a magnificent gown of holy white and gold, returning to her peerless beauty. Her silky blonde hair cascaded down, reaching her rounded and perky buttocks. Her features were bright and noble, like a beautiful fairy stepping out of a painting, and her golden eyes held a cold, majestic gaze that kept everyone at a distance. The loose, magnificent gown could not hide her tall, graceful figure. Her breasts were high and full, almost bursting out, and her waist was as slender as a willow branch. Most captivating were her long, shapely legs, which were faintly visible beneath her gown as she walked, appearing white and smooth. She was truly a celestial beauty. Creak pushing open the door, Qian Renxue, having restored her peerless appearance, said to porcupine-fish Douluo, who had been waiting for a long time, "Let's go." On the other side, Ning Fengzhai, Ning Rongrong, and sword Douluo had arrived at the Tiandu Great Spirit Arena and were heading toward Ling Tian's match venue. Unfortunately, Ling Tian's match had just ended, so they missed seeing his heroic performance. On the stage, they only saw a tall and slender youth wearing a golden dragon mask, holding a silver-white longsword with blood dripping from its tip. He looked down from above at the pale young man kneeling before him, whose eyes were dazed and vacant. "Your swordsmanship is decent, but unfortunately it's still a bit lacking." After speaking, the youth looked around. Amidst the mountain-like cheers and tsunami-like applause, his gaze fell on the referee nearby. "Announce the result," he said, lifting his chin. Snapping out of his shock and daze, the referee nodded repeatedly and shouted, "Ling Tian at spirit power level 38 versus Mo Jian at spirit power level 49. Ling Tian wins, he gains 10 points. The youth performed a sword flourish, flicked the blood off his sword, and sheathed it on his back. He glanced at the still-dazed Mo Jian, said nothing, and turned to leave. Retracting his gaze, Ning Fengzhai nodded with a satisfied smile. "Truly a young hero, Rongrong. What do you think of this person?" Pointing at the youth walking toward the corridor, he looked at his precious daughter, hoping she could move her heart away from that trash. "This Ling Tian was countless times stronger than that Qin Yuan." "He's very strong," Ning Rongrong said seriously. "He then you." Ning Fengzhai smiled. "But I still like brother Yuan the most." Ning Rongrong's sentence choked her father's words back into his throat, and Ning Fengzhai's smile froze on his face. His expression turned as dark as an iron pot, and he cursed inwardly. "What kind of bewitching soup did that brat give my daughter to have her so wrapped around his finger? No, that boy is far from worthy of Rongrong. That Ling Tian is my most perfect son-in-law. It seems I must let Rongrong have more contact with Ling Tian." Qin Yuan had come to the Seoul Arena specifically to fight a swordsmanship expert like Mo Jian. Now that it was over, he was about to leave. Just as he stepped out of the dim corridor, crisp applause and an elegant, gentle voice came from the white light of the exit. As expected of the peerless genius who has caused a sensation throughout the Heavendu Empire, to face a level 49 spirit ancestor with level 38 spirit power and remain unscathed. This terrifying achievement is enough to be recorded in the annals of the spirit master's world. Qin Yuan paused, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. This voice, was it Ning Fengzhai? Wasn't he supposed to arrive tomorrow? Though surprised, he didn't show it. He walked toward the exit and saw that besides Ning Fengzhai, Ning Rongrong and sword Douluo were also there. "And you are?" Qin Yuan asked curiously. pretending not to recognize them. Haha, I am Ning Fengzhai, the current sect master of the 7 Treasure Glazed Tile School. Ning Fengzhai smiled slightly and introduced Ning Rongrong and Sword Douluo to him. Ling Tian, this is our 7 Treasure Glazed Tile School's enshrined elder, Sword Douluo Chen Xin, the #1 swordsman on the Douluo Continent. This is my daughter Ning Rongrong, she isn't many years apart from you. You two can interact more. We elders are very happy to see young people getting along. Ning Fengzhai's words were filled with the intent of matchmaking. Father, Ning Rongrong shouted into satisfaction, clearly understanding her father's intentions. Qin Yuan looked at Ning Fengzhai with a strange expression, thinking, I don't need you to play matchmaker. School Master Enning, if you have something for this junior, please speak plainly, Qin Yuan said directly. Seeing this, Ning Fengzhai's face turned solemn and he said deeply, I have come to invite you to join my 7 Treasure Glazed Tile School. I will provide you with the most generous rewards. In the future, the entire sect will exert its full power to select the best spirit rings and spirit bones for you. I promise in the name of the 7 Treasure Glazed Tile School's sect master that your 9th spirit ring will be a 100,000-year spirit ring, and any spirit bones obtained from the hunt will be yours. Ling Tian, are you willing to join my 7 Treasure Glazed Tile School? After speaking, he looked at Qin Yuan with a hint of nervousness, fearing this peerless genius would refuse. After all, if he could recruit this peerless genius, the status of his 7 Treasure Glazed Tile School would be greatly solidified in the future, enough for even Spirit Hall to be wary. Hearing Ning Fengzhai's words, Sword Douluo's eyes couldn't help but widen slightly, his heart shaken. Fengzhai actually offered such terrifying conditions. This kid probably won't be able to refuse. Ning Rongrong also looked at her father with a face full of shock and disbelief. Qin Yuan was shaken inwardly, thinking, this old fellow is something else, offering such generous conditions. Even Spirit Hall might not be so willing. I'm sorry, School Master Enning, I have no intention of joining any sect. Actually refused? Ning Fengzhai, Ning Rongrong and Sword Douluo all widened their eyes in disbelief. In their view, such terrifying conditions would be impossible for any spirit master to refuse. This was the full cultivation effort of the 7 Treasure Glazed Tile School, not to mention a 100,000-year spirit ring and spirit bone. Has this Ling Tian lost his mind? Subsequently, Ning Fengzhai tried to persuade him earnestly, appealing to both reason and emotion, hoping Ling Tian would join the 7 Treasure Glazed Tile School. But in the end, Qin Yuan still refused, and Ning Fengzhai could only watch Qin Yuan leave with a face full of disappointment. Alas, what a pity! Such a peerless genius is destined to have no connection with my 7 Treasure Glazed Tile School. Ning Fengzhai sighed, shaking his head. After a long while, he calmed his emotions and looked at Sword Douluo and Ning Rongrong. Let's return to the sect. Father, Grandpa Sword, Brother Yuan should have returned home by now. You can go and give him some pointers on swordsmanship, Ning Rongrong said at this time, and Ning Fengzhai and Sword Douluo frowned. Especially Sword Douluo. For him, the #1 swordsman, to guide a newcomer who had just entered the path of the sword for barely half a year was truly overkill. Although the Crown Prince said Qin Yuan's swordsmanship had reached the 7th stage, how could Sword Douluo believe it? A newcomer who had only been studying the sword for half a year would at most be at the 1st stage. He wasn't worthy of Sword Douluo's guidance. But he couldn't withstand Ning Rongrong's acting spoiled, calling him Grandpa Sword over and over. Finally, Sword Douluo couldn't take it anymore and could only reluctantly agree. Let's get this straight, I'll go one last time. If that kid still isn't back, this old man won't wait for him. Grandpa Sword is the best. Chapter 23, Qian Renxue's recruitment. Just as he walked out of the Seoul arena, Qin Yuan stopped in his tracks again, staring intently at the luxurious carriage in front of him. A corner of the carriage curtain was lifted, revealing a face of peerless beauty. Those cold, beautiful eyes stared at him as her jade-like lips parted slightly. Ling Tian, would you care to come up for a chat? After 9 years, he was finally seeing his sister's true face again. Qin Yuan felt a wave of emotion in his heart. Before he was 3 years old, he had always slept with Qian Renxue. At that time, Qian Renxue probably thought he was too young to remember things, so she never used to disguise in front of him. So back then, he often saw Qian Renxue's true appearance, but after he turned 3, he never had the chance to see it again until now. Qin Yuan remained silent for a moment, took a deep breath and boarded the carriage. As expected, Qian Renxue was also there to recruit him, and her conditions weren't much different from Ning Fengzhai's. But even if the conditions were far inferior to Ning Fengzhai's, Qin Yuan wouldn't refuse his sister's recruitment. Without a hint of hesitation, he nodded in agreement, his face full of surprise and joy. These conditions are truly beyond my expectations. I am willing to serve you and will never betray you. Qian Renxue looked at Qin Yuan in surprise. She hadn't expected things to go so smoothly. She had thought it would take some effort to subdue such a peerless genius. Well, in the future you will receive everything you desire. Qian Renxue nodded with satisfaction. Now take off your mask. In the end, Qin Yuan still didn't take off his mask as he stepped down from the carriage. Her deep, cold and beautiful eyes watched Qin Yuan's departing back through the carriage curtain as Qian Renxue murmured softly, If his spirit wasn't the golden dragon, I would have thought the one sitting in front of me was Xiao Yuan. Is it just a similarity in build? Shaking her head slightly, she thought to herself. He said he wears the mask because he's hideously ugly and is unwilling to take it off. Very well, when he becomes a titled Douluo in the future and stays by Xiao Yuan's side to protect him, wearing a mask won't frighten Xiao Yuan. Qin Yuan was in a very good mood. He had finally seen his sister's true face again today, though he felt a bit guilty for deceiving her. I hope when sister finds out in the future she'll hit me a bit lighter, Qin Yuan said jokingly to himself, though he knew Qian Renxue wouldn't have the heart to hit him. Arriving at that inn, he used teleportation again to return to the imperial palace. Not long after his return, Ning Fengzhai, Ning Rongrong, and Sword Douluo arrived at the courtyard. Qian Renxue, who had also returned to the palace, immediately disguised herself as Zhu Qinghe upon hearing the news and rushed over, fearing that a certain brat might snatch him away from under her nose. Under Ning Rongrong's wheedling, Sword Douluo let out a soft sigh and reluctantly walked up to Qin Yuan with a frown, saying irritably, "Brat, perform your sword techniques with all your strength. I will only guide you once." His tone was very poor. He planned to give a few perfunctory comments later to satisfy Rongrong. After all, Qin Yuan was at most at the first stage of the sword Tao. A few casual pointers would be more than enough. "Go for it, brother Yuan." Ning Rongrong, standing to the side, waved her small fists. Her beautiful eyes were practically glued to Qin Yuan's handsome, almost otherworldly face without so much as a blink. Beside her, Ning Fengzhi's face grew darker and darker, and Sword Douluo felt the same. He made up his mind that he would take the opportunity to harshly criticize Qin Yuan later, saying his swordsmanship was worthless and that he had zero talent for the sword Tao, so as to shatter his image in Rongrong's heart. As for the arriving Qian Renxue, her eyes twitched slightly, and she cursed the brat in her heart. Qin Yuan felt that Sword Douluo was really not acting his age. Just because he had a good relationship with Rongrong, the man had such a huge problem with him. Sigh, old people these days really don't know how to care for the young. Qin Yuan drew the precious sword gifted by Qian Renxue from his waist, the dragon blood sword. The blade was crimson like blood and smooth as a mirror, capable of cutting through iron like butter. Qian Renxue had said it was a work of the divine craftsman Lu Gao. Qin Yuan directly displayed his sword techniques, which had reached the half-step sword Tao Grandmaster realm with full strength. The wind from the sword whistled in all directions, and the sword light was dazzling, making it look as if multiple Qin Yuans were dancing with the sword. Qin Yuan stabbed, hacked, slashed, and lifted. Every move was perfectly natural and full of charm. At times it was as gentle as a babbling brook, at others as urgent as a violent storm, and at others as swift as thunder and lightning. Sword Douluo was stunned. Ning Fengzhai was also stunned. Ning Rongrong's delicate mouth hung open in an O shape. All three were equally dumbfounded. When Qian Renxue saw this, the corners of her lips curled up unconsciously and her eyes sparkled with pride and glory. My Xiao Yuan is the best, as the one who understood swords best and had the highest achievements in the sword Tao. Sword Douluo's mind was currently a total blank. It felt as if 10,000 thunderclaps had exploded in his head at once, making his scalp tingle and leaving him unable to concentrate. Wait, you call this learning the sword for half a year? You call this learning the sword for half a year? This damn thing is called learning the sword for half a year. Then what does that make me, the supposed number one in the sword Tao, who couldn't even compare to him after 10 years of study back then? For the first time, Sword Douluo experienced what it felt like to have his head buzzing. Gradually, he came back to his senses and focused his thoughts. His sword-like eyes stared fixedly at the sword-dancing youth. His breathing became increasingly rapid and heavy, and his eyes glowed with a sharp light and fervor. But at the thought that the youth's innate spirit power was only half a rank, the light and fervor in his eyes turned into utter dimness and pain. Why is your innate spirit power only half a rank? Even if it were only rank 5, I would definitely take you as my personal disciple. The heavens are blind. Such a sword prodigy, a peerless genius of the sword Tao seen only once in 1,000 years, and his innate spirit power is actually only half a rank. Pain, it hurts so much. Sword Douluo unconsciously clutched his chest with his fingers. He felt as if his heart were being twisted by a knife, as if he were seeing an unprecedented supreme sword intent appearing on a discarded sword full of rust and cracks. After completing the set of sword techniques, Qin Yuan sheathed his sword and exhaled. He first turned to look at Qian Renxue, giving her a brilliant smile before turning to the pained and regretful Sword Douluo. Senior Sword Douluo, can this junior swordplay catch your eye? Sword Douluo remained silent for a long time. Finally, under the gaze of Qian Renxue, Ning Rongrong, and the others, he closed his eyes and said slowly, I have never seen someone of your age who has comprehended the sword Tao to such an extent. Even without my guidance, you will surely step into the realm of a sword Tao Grandmaster within half a year. It's just a pity. He didn't finish his sentence, instead letting out a heavy sigh filled with extremely complex emotions. If I still needed half a year to comprehend a sword heart, I might as well throw myself into sister's arms and die. Qin Yuan curled his lips inwardly. Hee hee, I knew brother Yuan was the best. Ning Rongrong cheered and jumped for joy as if she were the one being praised. Then she trotted over to Qin Yuan and intimately grabbed his arm. Her beautiful eyes curved into crescent moons, looking extremely happy. On purpose. This brat must be doing this on purpose. Seeing his daughter looking like she was giving herself away for free, Ning Fengzhai's face turned as black as a cast-iron pot again, and he trembled with rage. Although Qin Yuan's talent in the sword Tao had exceeded his expectations and deeply shocked him, Qin Yuan had a fatal flaw: his innate spirit power was only half a rank. This meant that in the future he would at most become a spirit grandmaster. Yu Xiaogang, who was known as Grandmaster in the Spirit Master's world, was a living example. He was nearly 50 and hadn't even broken through rank 30. How could his Ning Fengzhai's daughter, the future sect master of the 7 Treasure Glazed Tile School, marry such a person? Not only would he not agree, but the ancestral teachings wouldn't either. Therefore, he had to separate Qin Yuan and Ning Rongrong, even if it made his daughter hate him. Chapter 24. Breaking through to level 50. Sword Douluo, who had originally intended to just go through the motions, ended up staying at the Heaven Dew Imperial Palace for a full 3 days. Congratulations on comprehending Sword Heart. The Way of Sword has advanced to the 7th stage. Reward 7 evolution points. On this early morning, while receiving guidance from Sword Douluo, a line of information suddenly floated before Qin Yuan's eyes. Simultaneously, an incredibly sharp sword intent erupted from his body. The parasol leaves drifting around him were silently pulverized into dust. Surprise burst in his eyes as Qin Yuan suddenly turned to look at Sword Douluo. However, he found Sword Douluo staring at him with a face full of dull shock. Wait, he broke through just like that. According to his estimates, even with his guidance, it should have taken at least 2 or 3 months to break through to the realm of a Sword Tao Grandmaster. But what was happening now? I only gave you 3 days of guidance. How did you already break through? You're making it look like I have no talent in the way of sword at all. Sword Douluo found it a bit hard to keep his composure, but he had to save face. Thus, he forced a calm expression and said, "Not bad, you're only a little bit worse than I was." Qin Yuan felt this old man wasn't telling the truth, but he had no evidence, so he said apologetically, "Senior Sword Douluo is right to criticize. It took me half a year of studying the sword to enter the realm of a Sword Tao Grandmaster. I've made a fool of myself." A certain Douluo who had studied the sword for 15 years before entering the realm of a Sword Tao Grandmaster. Kopiup inus hangul kopiup inus. This kid is doing it on purpose. He's absolutely doing it on purpose. Sword Douluo had never been this sensitive before Sword Douluo left. He swore he would never come to this godforsaken place again. What a little bastard! Ning Rongrong, who had only spent 3 days with her brother Yuan, expressed her refusal to leave. She hugged her brother Yuan tightly and wouldn't let go, crying and shouting that she didn't want to leave him. If her father hadn't dragged her away, Qian Renxue, who was feeling murderous, might not have been able to stop herself from making a move. Finally, with red eyes, Ning Rongrong left reluctantly, looking back at every step and calling out for her brother Yuan. "She's already leaving and she's still provoking me." Qian Renxue's killing intent seethed, and she couldn't help but glare at her Xiao Yuan. Qin Yuan was as quiet as a cicada in winter. Japanese letter FF9F, de letter FF9F, letter FF89, letter FF9E. Long after they had passed the palace gates, Ning Rongrong sat in the carriage with her head bowed and her eyes red, remaining silent. Ning Fengzhai felt distressed for her, but he also had a headache. He naturally knew his daughter's feelings, but when he thought of the rules of the 7 Treasure Glazed Tile School, the partner of the future sect master must be a powerful battle spirit master. And Qin Yuan, with his innate spirit power of only half a level, simply wouldn't do. He couldn't help but sigh softly in his heart. This is destined to be a relationship without a result. To prevent his daughter from falling deeper, he felt he had to take action. He needed to find a way to cut off her contact with Qin Yuan and let time wash away these feelings. It would be best to let his daughter go out and see the world, to let her know that there were plenty of men more outstanding than Qin Yuan, and preferably people her own age. Ning Fengzhai couldn't help but think of Shrek Academy, so he looked at his daughter and smiled gently. "Rongrong, it's time you went to high-level Spirit Master Academy. You should spend more time with people your age instead of staying in the sect all the time. Which academy would you like to go to?" "Heaven Dew Imperial Academy," Ning Rongrong said without the slightest hesitation. Her dull eyes sparkled instantly as if they were shining. Ning Fengzhai's mouth twitched. He would have to be insane to let his daughter go to the Heaven Dew Imperial Academy. How was that any different from delivering meat to a wolf's mouth? The Qin Yuan he looked down upon was right there in Heaven Dew City, so he patiently tried to persuade her with reason and emotion. After a great deal of effort, Ning Rongrong finally gave up on the Heaven Dew Imperial Academy and chose to go to Shrek Academy instead. Seeing his daughter finally relent, Ning Fengzhai breathed a secret sigh of relief. She's finally away from that Qin Yuan. When Rongrong participates in the Spirit Master competition in the future and witnesses countless Spirit Master geniuses, she should lose interest in that trash. Then his heart was filled with a regretful sigh again. Son-in-law I was most satisfied with was still Ling Tian. It's a pity about that boy, alas. Half a year later, the Way of Sword has advanced to the 9th stage, obtained 9 evolution points. A line of information suddenly appeared before Qin Yuan, who was practicing his sword. A look of joy appeared in his eyes. He stopped his movements, sheathed his sword, and threw it into his storage spirit tool. Finally broke through to the 9th stage of the Way of Sword. Qin Yuan exhaled slowly, filled with emotion. With a thought, he called up his status panel. Name: Qin Yuan. Age: 13 years old. Spirit: Golden Dragon. Spirit Power: Level 40 plus. Spirit Rings: 3-clawed Dark Gold Dragon Spirit Ring 6,324 years plus. 8-winged Black Gold Dragon Spirit Ring 4,444 years plus. Titan Shaking Sky Roar Spirit Ring 6,666 years plus. Spirit Bone Golden Dragon Wings 5,444 years plus. Skills: Way of Chess 9th stage 5,679 50000. Way of Carving 9th stage 4,289 50000. Way of Sword 9th stage points 46. His gaze moved directly down to the skills section. Looking at the Way of Chess and Way of Carving, even though he hadn't focused on them much this year, his comprehension had gradually deepened over time. It just wasn't as fast as when he was fully concentrated on researching them. Next, his gaze landed on the evolution points section. This year, from his first contact with the sword until reaching the 9th stage, he had gained 45 evolution points in total. Combined with the one he hadn't used before, he had exactly 46 points. Because he needed to fight in the Great Spirit Arena to increase his sword experience, he hadn't used evolution points to raise his spirit power level. But after a year of cultivation, his spirit power had still increased by 2.5 levels, reaching level 40 just a few days ago, possessing ultimate strength. After breaking through to level 30, his spirit power began to undergo ultimate compression. The quality and abundance of his spirit power far exceeded that of spirit masters of the same level. However, this also caused his spirit power cultivation speed to drop significantly, only increasing by 2.5 levels in a year. Moving his gaze up, he looked at his age and remarked with emotion, already 13 years old. The Spirit Master competition is only a year away. Time flies. Qin Yuan's eyes gleamed. It was time to start planning for the immortal herbs, but before that. The corners of his mouth slowly curled up. System: add points. Without a hint of hesitation, he went all in. He used all his evolution points to raise his spirit power level. In the blink of an eye, a year's worth of accumulation was gone, leaving only 1 evolution points. But correspondingly, his spirit power began to climb rapidly like a volcanic eruption. It skyrocketed: level 41, level 43, level 46, level 49, level 51. Yes, his spirit power finally settled at level 51. A 13-year-old Spirit King, at the level of a level 40 Spirit Ancestor, raising 1 level required 4 evolution points, and at the level of a level 50 Spirit King, raising 1 level required 5 evolution points. By spending 45 evolution points, his spirit power had leaped across an entire major realm. Feeling his spirit power, which had increased by an unknown number of times, Qin Yuan's incomparably handsome face was filled with intoxication. This feeling of increasing power was truly wonderful. After a long while, he regained his composure, raised a hand to stroke his chin, and thought to himself, with my current spirit power, absorbing a 10,000-year 4th spirit ring won't be a problem. Soul shock already has little effect on me, but a look of madness appeared on his face. But how could I be satisfied with just a mere 10,000-year spirit ring? My 4th and 5th spirit rings must be at least 30,000 years old. By then, combined with the power of the immortal herbs, after absorbing the 4th and 5th spirit rings, my spirit power will surely soar directly to level 60. By the time I return from the Stardew Great Forest, I will be a Spirit Emperor. A 13-year-old Spirit Emperor? This would save more than 50 evolution points. Qin Yuan had worked himself to death for a year learning skills just to get 45 evolution points. As for how he would withstand a 30,000-year spirit ring limit, something only a spirit saint could normally handle, at level 50 he already had a plan. Chapter 25. Launch announcement. Dear readers, this book is first published due to you all audience. Recently my channel got monetized and I'm really happy. Please from now start subscribing, and also please like, subscribe and share my video and channel Ko-Fi audiobook, so I can continue uploading the channel. Thank you. Chapter 26. The Overconfident Woman. This time Qin Yuan did not take a carriage, but chose to head to the Heaven Dew Imperial Academy on foot. As his guard Lai Fu followed silently behind, walking along the bustling streets, he wove through the noisy crowds, enjoying a long-awaited moment of leisure. In these 3 years he hadn't rested for a single moment, spending every day honing his crafts. Now, he planned to rest for a while and learn new crafts after obtaining the immortal herb and returning from the Stardew Great Forest. Every time he passed a vendor, he would buy a snack. He loved this kind of street food, both in his past life and his current one, unknowingly. He walked out of Heaven Dew City and leisurely covered about 20 li before arriving at the gates of the Heaven Dew Imperial Academy. The Heaven Dew Imperial Academy was located on an isolated mountain 20 li outside of Heaven Dew City. From a distance, Qin Yuan could see the shimmering silhouettes of the buildings on the mountain. Standing before the magnificent gates of the Heaven Dew Imperial Academy, he didn't enter immediately, but instead took a moment to admire this top-tier institution of the Spirit Master's world. Song Qingshuang was walking out of the academy with her best friend Zhao Xuanzhi to go shopping in Heaven Dew City, the two of them chatting and laughing. Zhao Xuanzhi said with a grin, "Qingshuang, have you really seen Ling Tian? Quickly tell me, what does this Ling Tian, who is hailed as the #1 genius in the Spirit Master's world, actually look like? I really want to see him too, but Ling Tian's whereabouts are a mystery. No one knows where he is. I can only meet him in my dreams, and he's so gentle to me there, hee hee." Seeing her best friend dare to have a tryst with her beloved in a dream, a flicker of displeasure crossed Song Qingshuang's beautiful eyes, but on the other hand she felt extremely proud. To make the daughter of a marquis so obsessed without even meeting, he truly was a man worthy of Song Qingshuang's choice. However, this pride of hers was truly groundless, especially since she had personally pushed her beloved away by going to his home to break the engagement. He's heroic, powerful, aloof, and cold, like a divine being descended from the heavens, so magnificent he hardly seems real. Song Qingshuang also praised him excessively with an obsessed and bashful look, even though she had only watched him from afar back then. But soon her non-stop praise came to an abrupt halt. Her obsessed and bashful face instantly turned cold, and a deep sense of disgust and disdain flickered in her eyes. Her eyes landed on the handsome youth in front of the academy gates, and Song Qingshuang felt a surge of anger. Even though the engagement has been broken, he actually came to the academy to find me. Does he have no shame at all? Does he have to force me to spell it out to his face? Wow, Qingshuang, look, that guy is so handsome, he's even better looking than the Ling Tian in my dreams. Zhao Xuanzhi's eyes lit up as she exclaimed in surprise. What a fickle woman, unlike me who only likes brother Ling Tian. Song Qingshuang felt full of disdain for her best friend. But then the corners of her mouth curled up slightly as she thought complacently. The person you Zhao Xuanzhi are amazed by is just someone I Song Qingshuang have discarded. Thinking this, she said to the infatuated Zhao Xuanzhi in a casual and lazy tone, "I have something to take care of. Wait for me here for a moment." "Qingshuang, what is it?" Zhao Xuanzhi asked curiously. Song Qingshuang didn't answer but walked expressionlessly toward the handsome youth who had amazed Zhao Xuanzhi. This caused Zhao Xuanzhi's eyes to widen in surprise. Song Qingshuang walked up to Qin Yuan with a blank face and said displeasedly, "Qin Yuan, what are you doing here? It's over between us. The engagement has been annulled. Your uncle agreed to it personally." As she spoke, she shot a subtle glance at her best friend behind her. Suppressing the urge to smile and stifling her sense of superiority, she deliberately raised her voice and said impatiently, "Qin Yuan, I hope you stop pestering me. Doing this will only make me loathe you even more. You simply don't deserve me. It will never be possible between us." Hearing Song Qingshuang's words, Zhao Xuanzhi's eyes went wide, her face full of shock. Such a handsome youth had come to find Song Qingshuang. And it seemed he was pestering her. Zhao Xuanzhi couldn't help but feel envious and jealous. Damn that Song Qingshuang, she's eating so well. Song Qingshuang, who could already imagine her friend's envious and shocked expression, had a flash of triumph in her eyes. She became even more merciless toward Qin Yuan, berating him without restraint. "Did you hear what I said? Remember, don't come pestering me again. That will only make me look down on you even more. Consider yourself warned, humph." Someone who doesn't even know their own worth. Song Qingshuang gave Qin Yuan a disgusted glance and turned to leave. Qin Yuan was currently dazed, unable to quite understand what was happening. He was standing here admiring the scenery of the Heaven Dew Imperial Academy when this woman, whose brain might be broken, suddenly appeared and gave him a condescending lecture filled with disdain. He was completely baffled. Where does this woman get her confidence from? Unable to figure it out, he said, "Wait. Aren't you annoying?" Song Qingshuang turned back and snapped with a face full of impatience. In her vision, a palm rapidly enlarged and slapped heavily against her delicate and beautiful cheek. Slap! Song Qingshuang was sent flying by Qin Yuan's slap. Behind them, Zhao Xuanzhi's mouth slowly drifted open as she watched, dumbstruck, landing in a pathetic heap and covered in dust. Song Qingshuang was stunned. Lying on the ground, she touched her burning cheek in disbelief. It hurt. It was swollen. A nearly uncontrollable rage instantly flooded her heart. Song Qingshuang, who had never suffered even the slightest grievance since childhood, lost her reason and shrieked with resentment. "Uncle Zhang, kill him for me." A figure suddenly appeared, blocking the way in front of Song Qingshuang. His aged face was filled with an ugly expression as he stared at Qin Yuan, suppressing his anger. "Young Master Qin Yuan, don't you think you've gone a bit too far?" "Too far." Qin Yuan lazily picked his ear, gave the man a faint glance and casually ordered, Elder Fu, go and let him know what too far really means, young master. Lai Fu behind Qin Yuan respectfully accepted the command. His figure vanished instantly and appeared before Uncle Zhang like Gui Mei. The back of his hand, like a heavy hammer, smashed ruthlessly into Uncle Zhang's terrified old face. Slap. Like a clap of thunder, Uncle Zhang spat out blood. A mouthful of broken, blood-stained teeth flew out as he spun like a top into the dense forest, likely unable to even crawl back up. Against a spirit emperor, Lai Fu suppressed him with a single hand. Young master, it's settled. Lai Fu respectfully returned to Qin Yuan's side. Well done. Otherwise, people might think this young master is an easy target. Nodding in satisfaction, Qin Yuan stepped toward the resentful Song Qingshuang. He carefully examined the swollen half of her face and felt it looked uncomfortable, so, slap. With a backhand, he slapped the other side of Song Qingshuang's face, which visibly began to swell. That's better. Looking at Song Qingshuang, whose face was now symmetrically swollen, Qin Yuan nodded in satisfaction. Chapter 27. Say thank you. Song Qingshuang's mouth was bleeding and her beautiful face was now swollen like a pig's head, but her gaze toward Qin Yuan was filled with shock and resentment. She couldn't understand how Qin Yuan dared to hit her and hit her so hard. Fortunately, Qin Yuan was considerate and saw through Song Qingshuang's doubts. I really don't know where you get your confidence from, thinking I came for you. To be honest, if you hadn't mentioned the words broken engagement just now, I would have almost forgot who you were. Song Qingshuang's eyes widened suddenly and a wave of shame and embarrassment flooded her heart. She had misunderstood. Then Qin Yuan said amusedly, "You're quite the character. From childhood until now, no one has ever dared to lecture me like a grandson. You're the first. Should I call you brave or ignorant or just too used to being overbearing and looking down on everyone?" By the end, Qin Yuan's face turned cold. He grabbed Song Qingshuang's hair and said with a frigid gaze, "Even your father wouldn't dare speak to me like that. He has to show me respect when we meet. You, a mere daughter of a duke, even the legitimate daughter, are not qualified." Song Qingshuang looked at the fierce Qin Yuan, fear welling up in her eyes. Having grown up in a greenhouse, she had never been threatened so viciously and her body couldn't stop trembling. "A woman like you who can't figure out the situation needs to be hit." Qin Yuan stared at Song Qingshuang with cold eyes. "I hit you. Do you yield?" I yield." Song Qingshuang didn't dare to be stubborn anymore. "Good. It seems my words just now have reached your soul and made you realize your mistake." Qin Yuan nodded in satisfaction. "Say thank you." Song Qingshuang was stunned for a moment, thinking something was wrong with her ears. What? I made you see reality and avoid offending people you can't afford to provoke in the future. Shouldn't you thank me? Thank you." Song Qingshuang gritted her teeth and lowered her head in humiliation. "No need for thanks. I'm taking payment." Qin Yuan snatched the storage spirit tool from Song Qingshuang's fair wrist. Under her shocked and disbelieving gaze, he brandished it. "I'll be taking the payment. If there's any problem, have your father come find me at the Imperial Palace." Qin Yuan stood up with a smile, looking at Song Qingshuang with curiosity and doubt. "I'm curious, have you always been this confident?" Without waiting for Song Qingshuang, who was biting her lip, to answer, he waved to Zhao Xuanzhi, who was standing dazed on the mountain's stone steps. "Hey, you, come over here." Zhao Xuanzhi, who was in a state of extreme shock and daze, suddenly snapped back to reality. Seeing Qin Yuan's beckoning gesture, she hurried to look left and right, finding she was the only one around. Thus, she hesitantly pointed at herself tentatively. "Me? Yes, you." Zhao Xuanzhi was terrified. If he even dared to hit the legitimate daughter of a duke, then what was she, the legitimate daughter of a marquis? She could only pray silently in her heart, "Please don't hit me since you already hit her." Her body trembling, she moved toward Qin Yuan, not daring to open her eyes, waiting for her sentence. "I'll leave her to you. Don't let her die here. It's quite a hassle." Just as Zhao Xuanzhi's heart was filled with anxiety and dread, a gentle voice reached her ears, gradually fading away. When she opened her eyes, she found that the fierce man had already walked up the mountain, showing no intention of paying her any mind. Heaving a huge sigh of relief, Zhao Xuanzhi hurriedly helped up Song Qingshuang, whose eyes were red with grievance. Only after Qin Yuan had walked far away did Song Qingshuang dare to say with red, aggrieved eyes, "Xuanzhi, don't you think Qin Yuan went too far to hit me like this? I must have my father seek justice for me." Zhao Xuanzhi didn't dare to interject and remained silent, simply supporting Song Qingshuang as they walked toward Heaven Dew City. Qin Yuan had no interest in knowing Song Qingshuang's reaction. He had already entered the Heaven Dew Imperial Academy. The Heaven Dew Imperial Academy had never seen a man as handsome as Qin Yuan. Along the way, girls' eyes sparkled and they screamed in succession. At 12 years old, Qin Yuan was already 1.8 meters tall with a slender and well-proportioned build. His eyebrows were like swords, his face like a sculpture, and his skin like jade. Having grown up in the Imperial Palace and been cultivated by Qian Renxue, his temperament was noble and elegant. He was a peerless beauty, turning heads everywhere. A girl who was bold and confident in her beauty stepped forward with a blushing face. "Hello, can we get to know each other? My name is Liu Ryu, my father is an earl." Qin Yuan smiled and didn't answer but instead asked, "Do you know where Douluo is?" Liu Ryu's beautiful face stiffened instantly and she forced a smile while pointing the way. Qin Yuan thanked her with a smile and turned to walk away. Once Qin Yuan was far away, Liu Ryu's forced smile collapsed. She looked down at her chest, which blocked her view of her toes, and for the first time she began to doubt her own beauty. After asking several more beautiful girls who came to flirt with him along the way, Qin Yuan finally found Douluo Yan. Douluo Yan was both surprised and happy that a peerless beauty had sought her out. Her pale purple eyes stared unblinkingly at the face that didn't seem to belong to the mortal world. "Are you looking for me?" Yu Tianheng, who was nearby frantically pursuing Douluo Yan, felt a great sense of crisis and stared at Qin Yuan warily. "What do you want with Yan Yan? What business is it of yours?" Douluo Yan, prioritizing looks over loyalty, glared at Yu Tianheng with dissatisfaction. Yu Tianheng's heart sank halfway. She actually shouted at him for another man. Ignoring Yu Tianheng, Douluo Yan's beautiful eyes fell back onto Qin Yuan's peerlessly handsome face. In a soft voice Yu Tianheng had never heard before, she said, "Ignore him. What do you need from me?" With a half-smile, Qin Yuan glanced at the gloomy Yu Tianheng. Ignoring the other's threatening and warning gaze, he looked seriously at Douluo Yan. "You are sick." Douluo Yan's soft smile froze instantly. Such a great beauty, but why did he have to have a mouth? Also it shut sooner or later. Yu Tianheng's eyes suddenly lit up, feeling his chance to shine had come. He stepped forward. "How dare you speak like that? I can cure your snake poison." Ignoring the clown Yu Tianheng, Qin Yuan continued to stare at Douluo Yan. Douluo Yan stared at Qin Yuan in silence. Her appreciation for the handsome man turned into scrutiny filled with strong doubt. "You can cure it." "I can." Qin Yuan nodded, then changed the subject. "But I require a reward." "What reward?" "The medicinal herbs in your grandfather's garden. I want to pick them at will." Douluo Yan's pupils constricted. "How do you know about the existence of the medicine garden?" "I have my own channels." Qin Yuan smiled slightly. "To show my sincerity, I can let you feel it first." Saying that, Qin Yuan extended his right hand and pointed lightly toward Douluo Yan. A ball of warm, holy, and sacred white light flew toward Douluo Yan's chest. Douluo Yan instinctively wanted to dodge, but she felt no threat. Instead, she felt a sense of longing. The white light merged into her high chest. Douluo Yan felt a numbness throughout her body, and a never-before-felt sensation of comfort spread through her, making her face flush like a peach blossom, radiant and moving. Yu Tianheng's eyes went wide as he watched. Chapter 28. The incompetent Yu Tianheng. The white light came quickly and left just as fast, vanishing without a trace in less than 3 seconds. As the pleasant sensation faded, Douluo Yan opened her eyes with a sense of loss, only to immediately feel her body become exceptionally light. Unlike the heaviness of previous days, her beautiful eyes widened as she carefully sensed the toxins within her body. Ecstasy and shock flooded her face. The toxins in her body had actually been reduced by a full 30%. Douluo Yan suddenly looked up at Qin Yuan, her breathing becoming rapid. "Can you give it to me one more time?" Hey, those words are easily misunderstood. "Didn't you see this guy next to you is already seeing red? If you want it, tell your grandfather. If he agrees to my conditions, I will." Qin Yuan glanced at the fuming Yu Tianheng with a half-smile and said deliberately, "Give it to you one more time." After speaking, he ignored Yu Tianheng, whose eyes were bloodshot, gave a look to Douluo Yan, who was biting her red lips, and turned to leave with a smile. "How can I find you?" Douluo Yan asked urgently. "You will know," Qin Yuan replied, leaving without looking back. Yu Tianheng felt like an incompetent husband at this moment. That strange man had already disappeared from sight, yet the goddess by his side was still staring blankly in the direction the man had left. That was fun. At the thought of Yu Tianheng's fuming appearance just now, Qin Yuan couldn't help but grin. With his hands behind his head, he leisurely left the Heaven Dew Imperial Academy and headed toward the palace. Although he could directly use teleportation to find Douluo's medicinal garden, and the poisonous miasma on the outskirts couldn't stop him since he could just teleport across, and even if that didn't work, didn't he still have Miracle of Life? But if he did that, he wouldn't be able to befriend Douluo, the poisoned Douluo. Even if he could become a god in the future, befriending a titled Douluo now would bring him 100 benefits and no harm, so why not? Besides, treating Douluo Yan and Douluo was just a minor effort with no burden. Only a fool wouldn't do it. Furthermore, Douluo was a man of temperament who valued gratitude immensely. By bestowing a favor upon him, there would be many benefits in the future. However, he intended to wait a few days before looking for Douluo Yan. Only when they were anxious could he strive for greater interests. "Yan, the person is gone. Stop looking." Yu Tianheng walked up to Douluo Yan, blocking her view with a face full of resentment while inwardly cursing hatefully. "Damn pretty boy, so what if you're a bit good-looking? Is your spirit stronger than mine? Is your spirit power higher than mine? Is your status higher than mine? The next time I see you, I'll definitely beat your face into a pulp." Douluo Yan gave Yu Tianheng a dissatisfied glare, then turned and ran away without looking back. "Yan, where are you going?" Yu Tianheng's outstretched hand froze in midair and he stood there dazed like a sorrowful statue. Douluo Yan was in no mood to deal with Yu Tianheng now. Having finally found a way to solve her terminal illness, the priority was naturally to discuss it with her grandfather. Thus, Douluo Yan ran home out of breath and found Douluo, who was leisurely basking in the sun. "Yan, why are you back so early today?" Seeing his precious granddaughter return, Douluo immediately stood up with a smile. "Grandfather, listen to me." Douluo Yan quickly informed Douluo of everything that had just happened. Impossible, absolutely impossible. No one in the world understands poison better than I do. If even I can't solve the hidden danger in your body, it's even more impossible for a kid who isn't even as old as you. After hearing Dugu Yan's description, Dugu Bo didn't believe it from the bottom of his heart. Grandfather, it's true. Seeing that her grandfather didn't believe her, Dugu Yan became anxious and immediately asked the old man to check the toxins in her body. Dugu Bo reached out his hand half skeptically, and a wisp of spirit power surged into Dugu Yan's body. A moment later, Dugu Bo's old eyes widened and he exclaimed in shock, "It really has been reduced by 30%. No, it's impossible. According to your description, that boy is at most 14 or 15 years old. How could he solve toxins that even I couldn't? This is simply inconceivable." Dugu Bo was both horrified and confused, but regardless, his precious granddaughter finally had a way to live. He was ecstatic and immediately wanted to take her to find that boy. "Grandfather, I don't know where he is. I asked, but he wouldn't say," Dugu Yan said helplessly. Dugu Bo's brow furrowed, then smoothed out as he laughed nonchalantly. "No matter. As long as the person is still within the boundaries of Heavendu City, there is no one I cannot find." This was Dugu Bo's absolute confidence as the only titled Douluo in Heavendu City. Thus, Dugu Bo immediately dispatched all his manpower to search, while he himself took Dugu Yan to search throughout the city. As a result, for 3 consecutive days they couldn't even find a single hair. Dugu Bo fell into deep thought. This shouldn't be. Is there really someone I can't find in this Heavendu City? Could it be that the boy isn't in Heavendu City? Dugu Bo was somewhat anxious, fearing that the person who could save his precious granddaughter would not come, so he increased the manpower and continued the search, yet there was still no sign of the man. Now, even Dugu Yan became increasingly anxious. Why hasn't he come yet? He clearly agreed to it. "Young master, Dugu Bo is still searching the city for you. He has even included over a dozen surrounding cities in the search range." In a scenic residence in Heavendu City, Lai Fu spoke respectfully. It's only been 7 days, that's not enough." Qin Yuan was leisurely fishing and said with a light laugh, "Humans do not cherish things that are easily obtained, they only truly value what is hard-earned. So let Dugu Bo and Dugu Yan wait for another half-month. Only then can I secure greater interests." Lai Fu nodded and continued, "His Majesty and the Crown Prince are also looking for you. They already know that the person Dugu Bo is searching for is you, young master. I expected as much. Otherwise I wouldn't have stayed here without even returning to the palace," Qin Yuan said unsurprised. In this way, Qin Yuan made Dugu Bo and Dugu Yan wait for more than half a month while he himself rested for more than half a month. On this day he finally returned to the palace. However, he didn't return to the palace openly, but used teleportation to go back, intending to see Qian Renxue first before releasing the news to let Dugu Bo take the initiative to come to the palace to find him. Learning that Qin Yuan had returned, Qian Renxue immediately rushed over and scolded. "Xiao Yuan, where have you been these past few days? You didn't even say a word to me. Do you know how worried I was?" Qin Yuan immediately admitted his mistake with a grin. Qian Renxue wasn't truly angry, but she still put on an angry front, pinching Qin Yuan's cheeks with both hands. "If you make me worry again, I'll punish you by not letting you sleep in." Qian Renxue declared an extremely cruel punishment. Qin Yuan looked terrified and repeatedly promised he wouldn't dare do it again. Only then did Qian Renxue nod with a satisfied smile. Having raised the child herself, she knew exactly how to handle him. Just then, a sharp voice came from outside. "His Majesty has arrived." Chapter 29. A huge loss. Haha, Xiao Yuan, Uncle knew you weren't a useless person. This is the first time in all these years Uncle has seen Dugu Bo place someone in such high regard. Emperor Xue Ye patted Qin Yuan's shoulder with great intimacy, showing no signs of distance at all. The corner of Qin Yuan's mouth twitched slightly. He only now realized that this cold-hearted uncle was actually a master of hypocrisy. After 6 years of cold shoulders, the moment he learned of his value, he immediately came to the door to reconnect with warm feelings. After all, Dugu Bo was the only titled Douluo in the entire Heavendu Empire. Emperor Xue Ye didn't dare to be negligent and naturally wanted to find every way to win him over. He just hadn't expected that this useless nephew of his could actually gain Dugu Bo's attention. He curiously asked for the reason, and Qin Yuan sighed. "I accidentally discovered a spirit ability that can cure the terminal illness of Senior Dugu Bo's granddaughter, which is why Senior Dugu Bo values me so much." Emperor Xue Ye looked astonished. Dugu Yan was terminally ill? How had he never heard of this? Qian Renxue also looked surprised. Then Emperor Xue Ye's eyes gleamed. He dismissed everyone, leaving only Qian Renxue and Qin Yuan, and then whispered, "Xiao Yuan, with this healing ability of yours, can you control Dugu Yan's recovery speed? It's best not to cure her completely. Make it so Dugu Yan and Dugu Bo have to rely on you for a long time. Only then can they be used by my imperial family." Fuck, that's so damn dark. Qin Yuan was stunned. He never expected Emperor Xue Ye to be so black-hearted. Qian Renxue, on the other hand, didn't react much. She had long since grown accustomed to such things over the years. "Xiao Yuan, Uncle has been on the throne long enough and is considering abdicating in the next few years. When the time comes for Zhu King to become emperor, his position will be hard to stabilize without the support of a titled Douluo. You wouldn't want Zhu King's throne to be unstable, would you?" Emperor Xue Ye knew his bond with this nephew was weak, far inferior to his bond with Zhu King, so he played the emotional card. Why does this phrasing sound so familiar? It feels like I've heard it somewhere before, maybe in some action movie. Qin Yuan fell into deep thought. Imperial father, I don't need that. Qian Renxue didn't want to make things difficult for her Xiao Yuan, so she immediately ignored Emperor Xue Ye's meaningful look and refused outright. Emperor Xue Ye's expression turned somewhat ugly. Seeing this, Qin Yuan intentionally sighed and said, "Uncle, this ability of mine isn't something I can use whenever I want. There are limitations." Gazes of both Emperor Xue Ye and Qian Renxue fell upon Qin Yuan. With a solemn face, Qin Yuan said, "To use this healing ability, I must consume my life force. The more times I use it, the shorter my lifespan becomes. This is also why I've been unwilling to reveal it." Qian Renxue's expression changed drastically and she hurriedly grabbed Qin Yuan's shoulders. "Xiao Yuan, why didn't you say so earlier? You are absolutely forbidden from using it ever again, do you hear me?" I'll remember." Qin Yuan nodded earnestly. Emperor Xue Ye's eyes flickered as if he were planning how to maximize the benefits, completely disregarding Qin Yuan's safety. Then after a few words of fake concern, he left. "Xiao Yuan, don't worry about Douluo Bo. I'll handle him. Remember, you must never use it again." Qian Renxue had never spoken to Qin Yuan in such a stern tone. Peeking out to see that Emperor Xue Ye had gone far away, Qin Yuan immediately grinned and said, "I said that on purpose just now. Actually, there's no harm at all." Qin Yuan raised his right hand, which glowed with a holy white light, making Qian Renxue feel exceptionally warm and comfortable. Really, Qian Renxue was still a bit uneasy, fearing that Qin Yuan just didn't want her to worry. Of course it's true. A cunning expression appeared on Qin Yuan's face. "If I didn't say that, my cold-hearted uncle would definitely find ways to exploit me. I won't let him have his way. Besides, when Douluo Bo comes later, I can use this to bargain for even greater benefits. After all, my treatment requires lifespan as payment." Hearing this, Qian Renxue finally breathed a sigh of relief. Having raised Qin Yuan since he was a child, she could see through his lies at a glance. "What a naughty boy, I never taught you these things." Qian Renxue pinched Qin Yuan's cheek with fond helplessness. Not long after the news of his return spread, Douluo Bo arrived with Douluo Yan. Qin Yuan wasn't good at negotiating, so Qian Renxue stepped in on his behalf to deal with Douluo Bo and fight for greater benefits. Naturally, Qian Renxue kept the fiction about Qin Yuan's healing ability consuming his lifespan and even exaggerated it quite a bit. Learning that the cure would cost Qin Yuan's lifespan, Douluo Bo didn't feel right pushing too hard. And so, after some bargaining, both parties reached an agreement. Qin Yuan would completely cure Douluo Yan, and in exchange Douluo Bo promised that Qin Yuan could pick any 20 types of herbs from his herb garden, and he would also owe Qin Yuan 3 favors. Just as the agreement was reached, Emperor Xue Ye suddenly appeared, acting generously with someone else's effort. "Douluo Bo, as an imperial consultant of my imperial family, treating your granddaughter is something my imperial family should do. There's no need for you to pay anything. I will have my nephew treat your granddaughter for free." These words chilled Qin Yuan's heart. One must realize that in Emperor Xue Ye's current understanding, every time Qin Yuan used his healing ability, it would consume his lifespan. Yet even knowing this, Emperor Xue Ye still used his healing ability as a bargaining chip to win over Douluo Bo, giving it away for free. How could this not make Qin Yuan's heart turn cold? The last trace of familial affection he had for Emperor Xue Ye completely vanished. Since Emperor Xue Ye didn't care whether he lived or died, then he, as a nephew, wouldn't care whether his uncle lived or died either. If Qian Renxue wanted to kill Emperor Xue Ye in the future, Qin Yuan would definitely not step in to stop her. Originally, Qin Yuan had thought about saving Emperor Xue Ye's life once his own strength increased, but now what did it have to do with him? After hearing Emperor Xue Ye's words, Qian Renxue also looked furious and strongly opposed it. But Emperor Xue Ye used his authority as emperor to suppress Qian Renxue. In the end, it was Douluo Bo who spoke up, stating that he was not an unreasonable person and that the terms previously discussed would stand. Douluo Bo's initiative prevented a conflict from breaking out between Emperor Xue Ye and Qian Renxue. Afterward, Qin Yuan began treating Douluo Yan. Although Qin Yuan could have completely cured Douluo Yan within a minute, in order to show the difficulty of the treatment, he intentionally dragged it out for a full 10 days before she was fully cured. He also performed Miracle of Life a total of 10 times, and his face intentionally grew paler and more haggard by the day. If Qian Renxue hadn't known it was an act, she would have been worried to death. Seeing this, any lingering resentment Douluo Bo had over the terms completely vanished. He even felt indebted and thought about how to compensate him properly in the future. And seeing such a peerless handsome man willing to consume his own life to save her, Douluo Yan was incredibly moved. Although she knew Qin Yuan was doing it for her grandfather's herbs, she still couldn't help but feel moved, and her favorable impression of Qin Yuan skyrocketed. Qin Yuan didn't know that his act of playing the victim was so effective. He even felt it wasn't enough and said in an extremely weak voice, I've lost about 2.5 years of my life. I've really lost out." Chapter 30, Zhu Zhuqing and Ning Rongrong. After completely curing Douluo Yan, Qin Yuan said with a pale face, "Senior Douluo, once I have recovered, I hope you will fulfill your promise." Douluo Bo nodded solemnly, then joyfully left the palace with the reluctant Douluo Yan. Dugu Yan's condition had always been a source of anxiety for him. Now that she was completely cured, his inner joy was understandable, and he couldn't help but feel full of gratitude toward Qin Yuan. After Dugu Bo and Dugu Yan were far away, Qin Yuan's weak and pale face quickly became rosy and spirited again. How was my acting? He looked at Qian Renxue with a proud face. My Xiao Yuan is the best. Qian Renxue didn't spoil the mood at all, praising him with a face full of sincerity. Once Qian Renxue left, Qin Yuan lay back on a lounge chair with a relaxed expression, enjoying the service of two beautiful maids. Now that he had Dugu Bo's promise, in a few days he would enter the ice and fire yin yang well and use the octagonal mysterious ice grass and the infernal apricot to temper his body. Possessing the miracle of life, he knew the effects and usage methods of all plants like the back of his hand. He knew a special way to use these two peerless immortal herbs. Although in the original work, Tang San also used these two types of immortal herbs to temper his body, it took until level 70 to completely refine the medicinal effects. The special method he knew could completely refine the medicinal effects in a very short time, using all of them to enhance physical fitness without a single bit of waste. As for how much he could improve, it would depend on how old those two peerless immortal herbs were. The older they were, the more terrifying the degree of improvement. What he sought was to improve his physical fitness so that he could absorb spirit rings of higher years, making his spirit power increase even more rapidly. One must know that his spirit was the golden dragon which possessed ultimate strength. For ultimate attributes, the cultivation speed would drop significantly after level 30. Correspondingly, the spirit power would be extremely compressed, making its quality and thickness far exceed that of spirit masters of the same level, and his combat power would also far surpass them. Therefore, to rise from level 51 to level 60, the total years of the 4th and 5th spirit rings probably couldn't be lower than 100,000 years, and that's even with the help of immortal herbs that boost spirit power. For spirit masters with ultimate attributes, spirit power is just that difficult to increase. However, the rewards were also plentiful enough. Qin Yuan couldn't wait for it. If he was going to play the victim, he had to do it right, so Qin Yuan decided not to visit Dugu Bo for at least half a month to avoid raising any suspicion. Ning Rongrong had been at Shrek Academy for half a year and got along very well with Tang San, Zhu Zhuqing and the others. However, that guy named Oscar was truly annoying, sticking to her like a plaster that couldn't be shaken off. Oscar. If you keep following me, I won't be polite with you. Ning Rongrong stood with one hand on her hip, pointing angrily at Oscar, who had followed her to the girls' dormitory. Rongrong, Oscar stood there awkwardly, his hands moving unnaturally. Zhu Zhuqing and Xiao Wu, who were nearby, both held their foreheads in exasperation. That wasn't the way to chase a girl. HMPH. Seeing Oscar settle down, Ning Rongrong gave a cold snort and turned to return to the dormitory. Seeing this, Oscar immediately looked pitifully at Zhu Zhuqing and Xiao Wu. Xiao Wu, you can't just stand by and watch me die. What can we do? Xiao Wu said with a grin, arms crossed. Rongrong's best friends, if you say a few good words for me, it'll definitely change her opinion of me. Oscar chuckled, rubbing his hands together like a lecherous fly. I'll pay 100 gold coins. I'll pay 100 gold coins. Xiao Wu's eyes darted around as she said with feigned difficulty, but Rongrong is my best friend. 200, Oscar gritted his teeth. Xiao Wu beamed and reached out her fair little hand toward Oscar. Oscar's lip twitched as he painfully counted out 200 gold coins from his pouch one by one. After becoming a spirit elder, Spirit Hall provided a monthly allowance of 100 gold coins. Losing 2 months' worth at once was truly painful. The rogue rabbit snatched the 200 gold coins and pulled Zhu Zhuqing toward the dormitory, with Oscar's urgent voice coming from behind. Xiao Wu, Zhuqing, don't forget what you promised me. Got it, the rogue rabbit replied without looking back as she entered the dormitory. Inside the dormitory, Xiao Wu grinningly split half of the gold coins with Zhu Zhuqing. Xiao Wu, this isn't right, is it? Zhu Zhuqing hesitated and didn't reach out. What's wrong with it? A girl as good as Rongrong should naturally be set up with one of our own brothers. Do you really want to see Rongrong marry some strange man? Xiao Wu stuffed the gold coins into Zhu Zhuqing's arms. Hearing Xiao Wu's words, Zhu Zhuqing pursed her lips but still didn't accept the gold coins, saying, we should first ask if Rongrong likes someone. Only then should we try to set her up with Oscar. If Rongrong isn't willing, then forget it. Hee, no problem. Xiao Wu happily pocketed the 200 gold coins she got for nothing. Pushing the door open and waiting a while, they saw Ning Rongrong, who had just finished bathing and looked as beautiful as a lotus emerging from water, her wet jet-black hair cascading behind her like a waterfall, a silk nightgown draped over her exquisite body, and she emitted a refreshing fragrance. The rogue rabbit revealed a mischievous smile and suddenly pounced, her hands roaming over the chest and buttocks, causing Ning Rongrong to cry out in mock annoyance. Hee, Rongrong is developing quite well, curvy in all the right places. I wonder which stinky man will get lucky in the future. Ning Rongrong's face turned red and she lowered her head slightly without speaking. Seeing this, both Xiao Wu and Zhu Zhuqing were stunned. They exchanged a look, their beautiful faces filled with surprise and gossip, and immediately surrounded her to begin their interrogation. Rongrong, be honest. What's his name? How long have you known him? How far have things progressed? The string of questions caused Ning Rongrong's face to flush with shyness, even her earlobes turning a translucent red. Seeing that Ning Rongrong wouldn't speak, the two girls pounced on her and tickled her. Ning Rongrong couldn't take it anymore and had to helplessly compromise. All right, I give up. His name is Qin Yuan, he's a few months older than me and we've known each other since we were kids. Wow, childhood sweethearts. Xiao Wu cried out in surprise, unable to help thinking of herself and Tang San, who could also be considered childhood sweethearts. Beside her, Zhu Zhuking's eyes showed envy. She thought of Ling Tian, whom she had met in the Stardew Great Forest a year ago. She still didn't know his feelings and was waiting to go to Heaven Dew City to get a response from that man. In one dormitory there were 3 girls, 2 of them had someone they liked, so the remaining one naturally became the target of the other 2 girls. Zhuking, I have third brother, Rongrong has Qin Yuan, and you and boss die. Xiao Wu said bluntly, grinning as she stared at Zhu Zhuking. Both she and Ning Rongrong knew that Zhu Zhuking was Dai Mubai's fiancé. Ignoring Xiao Wu's teasing, Zhu Zhuking shook her head slightly and said, I will find a way to break the engagement with Dai Mubai. The one I like is someone else.